turbo brake is welded up and prepped, so I'm testing it out. You see it's telescoping back and forth, and it has a tilt side to side. So this works pretty good. Making sure everything functions pretty good before I paint it up. Sweet. And of course you're not going to have that much movement from heat expansion from the header, but it'll still give some maneuverability to slide back and forth and also tilt it when we go to set up our intercooler. Just finished cutting some bolts down for my end links for my turbo support bracket. And originally I had bought this deburring tool, and this thing, it doesn't work good at all. I want to call it a name, but it doesn't work good at all. So it was a waste of money, and I actually bought two of them. So I spent a little extra money and bought a single one, and these actually have the carbide tips inside, and these cut excellent. First time around, after I sliced off the bolts, this deburred, excellent, and they thread right in without any issue at all. Both threads in great, but that other tool, it didn't work good at all. And this is fine thread. Is actually 1/2 inch by 20 if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, a fine pitch thread, and this did not work good. This is the one you want. I have the turbo bolted in position now, and I can make some adjustments. So in the current position that it's sitting up a little too high. So the top part of the compressor housing will make contact with this rib right here on the hood. So what I'm going to do is now I can lower it down. This is what I have so far. I bought the extended end links, and with these extended end links, what I can do is cut them down into position. So for example, here's an end link like this. I can literally shave off an inch right here. That'll give me the proper clearance I need. I can then cut down my adjustable end link too, so that the threads doesn't protrude too far down in here. I can still use my stop jam nut at the top of that, like I have right here, and all of that should work fine. So that is the game plan. Take off an inch here, still utilize my jam nut, and cut down some of the threads off of the top part of the joint itself, and then that'll give me room to run my bolt from through the bottom, as well as run this in without making contact with the two bolts itself. So just for reference, I have my turbo bolted into position with the turbo bracket keeping it fixed up. So this works pretty good. I can allow it to tilt back and forth as well as shimmy in and out. That way it'll still allow for any type of heat expansion and contraction. But what I need to do is adjust it down some. It will make contact with the top part of the hood, so I can bring it down. I don't want to do it right now. I have my light up here, but it will actually make contact with this red right here on the hood. So what I'm going to do is shave off an inch of the end length, because it is pretty long, and there's plenty of room for it to be modified because they thread this from top to bottom all the way through, which is great. So shaving off an inch right here will allow me to drop this down 1 inch and give me the hood clearance that I want, as well as I can still, by this being a pivot, I can allow it to tilt back and forth as well as slide side to side to get my proper adjustments. And just for a reference, this was a mark that I made earlier before I put the bracket, which lines up right here. So all I have to do is I have room to tilt this back like this, but I have a piece of wood propped up under just to hold it fixed in position until I cut my end links. But for reference, if I take this wood out, as you can see, it'll tilt back and forth. I have all my adjustments that I need. If that lines up with that mark, I can actually go past it, line it up with the mark, as well as slide back, extend forward. So that works pretty good. In just a frontal view, I can tilt back and forth and in and out like a seesaw. Turbo removal turned out far better than I expected. Once I remove the cotter pin from the end of the shaft, I can literally, and if I take the front bolt loose, I can literally pivot the whole turbo around and just swing it up out of the car because this allows the flexibility. And then just putting it back in is the same way. Angle the turbo in position, slide it into the pin, put it back around, and then thread that other bolt into position. That turned out pretty good. I have my cell phone positioned behind an open slot, and you can actually see light between the turbo compressor housing and the hood of the car. So I can literally tilt back and forth. As you can see, there's still daylight. So this works out to be pretty good. We have the clearance we need. And I was actually shining my cell phone through these open slots. You can see that the hood is completely down and shut, which is great. I no longer have to use this strap that I was using to support the turbo, and the turbo is actually positioned on itself on these brackets. So this is the turbo bracket that I fabricated. I'm going to notch out where I had the X mark at, those two marks right there. And the reasoning for that is that way, as you can see, you can be able to get to that third bolt for the transmission case mount, and also the other, you can get a longer extension down to the plate that we fabricated for the cooler. So this works out to be great. In this current position, the air filter clears very good. So we'll get an opportunity to see once this engine starts torquing under horsepower under launch, how much the engine will pivot forward. But you can actually see the turbo actually supported on the brace itself. And the hood is fully closed. It's totally closed. All the way level. And as you can see, air filter that clears perfectly. Luckily, I selected an air filter that has a nice taper that tapers down just excellent enough for this to clear the hood. But under hard launches, the engine can and will want to tilt back. We'll get a chance to see how much more the engine will actually tilt back, and if it does, it may actually make contact at the top part of the filter, possibly causing it to hit the hood a little bit, and if it starts to crush or make contact, we'll get a chance to see. But at least during street drivability, we'll have a filter, so that way we're not ingesting any type of dust particles into the engine, which will definitely decrease engine life. When we hit the track, then we can take this off and put a screen type of filter on here. But this suffices for street drivability and works excellent, as well as it still gives extremely good airflow, 5 inches, and it fits pretty good. Here's a better look with everything lit up. Filter looks pretty nice on here, and we have a lot of flexibility. But if I fix the turbo somewhere around this position, that gives great hood clearance. I have the turbo is supported the backside on some blocks. If I take these blocks out, you can see how much room I actually have to pivot this back and forth, as well as I can have the proper clearance for our turbine housing. And when we put our funk heat cover on the turbine housing, that help out drastically. But we can still slide back and forth, as well as back, tilt side to side. But as far as getting the proper amount of clearance that we need, this is where we want to be for the most part. And it'll still allow some maneuverability if we need. But once we take it down like this, this is where we want to have the most clearance as far as engine travel. So this is a slight mock-up of how I'm going to position the plumbing feeding into the turbine housing itself. I'm going to replace this piping with Schedule 10 piping, which is a lot more durable and rugged and can sustain the heat that's going to be feeding into this turbocharger and maintaining some high horsepower numbers. So this is going to look pretty good. We'll still have the clearance coming around our throttle, our valve cover. So this is like a temp mock-up of how I'm going to have the piping feeding into the turbocharger itself. we're going to have a fluke turbo heat cover to help maintain some of the heat coming from here. We'll more likely wrap this. This original piping right here is going to get replaced with some scheduled 10 piping that I already have that just came in last week. Therefore, that piping is a lot thicker. It'll help sustain the heat that's being sent into this turbocharger, and with this engine putting in 4-digit horsepower figures and possibly holding that for quite some time. So with the heavy duty schedule 10 piping, it'll definitely reduce any type of exhaust cracking. This is going to get replaced with schedule 10 piping also, even though this is not bad as far as the pipe work, but we're still going to run some heavy duty schedule 10 piping, which came in stock also. So just a brief overall look of how it's going to be positioned in the engine bay. This is going to be a little bit shorter right here. I do have a straight. I'm going to decide whether I want to put a flex here or not. Possibly will do, but we'll see with how I end up positioning these up pipes and how much room I have to end up putting a flex coupler right there. And this is the flex coupler that I would like to put in position. This is nice, rugged, heavy duty, pretty much set up and designed for turbocharged applications. I would position it somewhere right in here, and this will definitely help out with reducing any potential exhaust cracking and allow for the heat expansion and contraction that we're looking for, while producing, sustaining, and maintaining high horsepower numbers. But overall, this is finally the stage that I've been wanting to get to for a while, having this turbocharger fixed in position, so therefore I can run the plumbing to the turbocharger itself. We have the proper hood clearance that will allow for this Canon air filter to clear. We have clearance for our compressor housing as well as this V-band clamp. All of that clears pretty good. If needed be, I could shorten this pedestal stand right here that's supporting the end link, and that can drop us down a little bit further if need be. But either way, this is still maintaining a good height level and giving me a little bit of clearance all around the turbocharger itself, so that it's not too close to the transmission housing or the lines itself, and I can allow that expansion and contraction from here. But we will be running a fluke turbo blanket on the turbine housing itself. But this is the stage that I've definitely been wanting to get to for a long time. Now I can start tack welding all the pipe work into position, and if all works well tomorrow, I can do that. But for the time being, I will notch out my turbine bracket, because I want to notch it out for some clearance, so I can actually move this out the way. And here I can move this, but just for reference, you can see how the turbocharger can tilt back and forth, as well as telescope in and out just like this. I can go all the way up against the housing and move back. So I got an inch more than enough of clearance what we need as far as allowing this. I will shorten this and link out the shaft. I can cut it right here where I have the mark and put a cotter pin right here, drill a hole and put the cotter pin right here just to shorten that up. Don't need the extra length right here. This removal turned out far better than I expected. I can literally pull the cotter pin out, loosen this bolt up, and spin the whole turbocharger around, pull this other cotter pin out, and the whole turbocharger just spins out of position and just raises up out of the car. So with the air filter off, bolt out, cotter pins out, I can literally swing the turbo around and then just raise it up. Turned out very good. Okay, I've test fitted my turbocharger quite a few times on this bracket. I have my clearance to where I want. Now I'm going to take this bracket back out, notch here for this bolt for the transmission mount, and notch down here for the bolt for the plate, so that way I can go straight through the top and have that extra clearance, as well as notch here, and if we need to take this bolt out for any reason, we can actually gain access to that. Of course, you would have to take it's smarter to take the whole turbocharger bracket off if you was going to remove this transmission mount, but either way. Okay, I decided not to notch this out, because either way, if we were going to be removing anything like this transmission mount or any bolts or accessories, we would be taking this whole bracket off anyway. So I'll leave all of this here for structural integrity and don't notch anything, because if we needed to get to this plate or anything like this motor mount related, we will be removing the turbocharger anyway. So no need to mess with any of this if it's already pretty much strong as is. So I'll just probably put another coat of painting on it. I would like to notch this out just a little bit more because my bolt clearance is pretty much, it's nice, it's exact on. I mean, it's very nice, but to the point where I would like just a little more clearance. As you can see, it's snug, very snug, to the point where threading into the end link, it's a little tight, but if I can give me a teeny bit more play, it'll make installation and removal a lot easier. So I'll just notch that open just a little bit more and put another coat of paint on it. We'll be good to go. I'm about to mount the turbocharger. I actually trimmed the V-band a little bit right around here and the housing, smoothed it out just a little bit with a nice smooth sanding tip. That way this mount could go in pretty good and just clear without too much of a problem. So I can actually just push it in this way. I was able to go ahead, I used Loctite, tighten my bolts down. These are grade 12.9 bolts. So they're a lot stronger than some of the original bolts that came with it. And I wanted to go with a stronger hardware for the simple fact that all of this is being supported by these bolts. So I wanted to make sure. So these bolts are 2.5 times stronger than the original bolt, and I feel a lot more secure using that. My turbo bracket is already installed in the car, as you can see. So I have one of my end links already installed. As I stated in another video, installation is very good and pretty easy. I can rotate this top end link around, stick my shaft in here and pivot it around, and then bolt my other section right here, and my turbo will be fixed into position. Okay, this is truly research and development and trial and error. So right here you can see some scratches on my bracket right here, and that is because I mounted my old return line, and you can see the paint that actually came off on that. So what I'm gonna have to do is notch that housing out right in here, slice a U in here, so that way I have proper clearance and I can tilt my turbocharger up like I want. Luckily, the main structural support will be across here and here like a tabletop. I'll just notch right here somewhat in the center a little bit, that way I'll have that extra clearance for my return line. Okay, this marks the spot where I'll have to notch out for the extra clearance for my return line. I mounted the turbo in position just so we can see the clearance for the return line. So I notched out the support bracket, so I still have mine tilt back and forth as well as telescoping in and out, as you can see. So you can see as I'm getting closer to the fuse box, back and forth and back and tilt side to side. So what I'm going to do is, just to get extra clearance from here, we're going to have a turbo blanket on it anyway. I'll notch the front part, and let me see if I can shine a light in there to get a better look. I'll bring it here. So I have to notch out this front corner just a little more. As you can see, the back part is notched out where I can slide back. If I go further forward here, that'll give me a little extra travel, just notching the front section out just a little more. Okay, I have my clearance back that I'm looking for. I can tilt my turbo back and forth as well as slide it in and out. So you can see, if you use the fuse box as a reference, and then I can still tilt it back and forth. So we're not going to be vertically upright like this. We're still going to be slightly tilted back just a little bit because the compressor housing is so large. It still needs to clear this bottom section of the transmission case, but either way we have somewhat almost a vertical position. And as you can see, my notch down under here for my return line, I'm literally sliding the turbo back and forth right here, so you can see I got proper clearance. So whatever fixed position we adjusted in, as well as we shouldn't have any type of binding at all. There should be more than enough, easily an inch of clearance back and forth. Okay, we have a different angle. You can see right here, I have full clearance of my oil return line. The compressor housing is literally pushing up against the battery cable right there, the V-band clamp. So we're not going to be going too much further than that right there, but we do have our full motion of travel back and forth, as well as being able to stop in and out, like I said, an inch. So you're definitely not going to have nowhere near that much heat expansion, but we do have the clearance that we need for our 45-degree return line, as well as the turbo mount. So I'll go ahead and paint this bracket up again. This bracket is definitely getting quite a few coats of paint, but we're coming down the final stretch of having the turbo mounted with the return line. We had it mounted before, now we had to make provisions for the return line.